Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the family meeting. I might change the title. Right now it's called What Just Happened in Syria, but I might change it to Kevin Briggin's theories on geopolitical whatnot, because that's what we are here to talk about.
Yep.
So,
And for
happy
anyone,
Christmas.
yep. And for anyone confused, I am not Monique Duson.
That's right. Monique had no interest in talking about geopolitical whatnot. So I am here, Kevin is here, and we are going to talk about it. And so jump in the comments if you want Kevin's perspectives on what is happening around the world. We're going to start off by talking about what appears to be the complete collapse of the Syrian government within a few hours. I don't understand how that happens when a whole country collapses in a few hours, but we're going to talk about that. And maybe if there's time, I'll just pepper him with a number of conspiracy theories that.
I didn't bring my tinfoil hat.
Because I do be texting him with all my conspiracy theories.
Yes.
So if you have questions about your favorite conspiracy theory in the news lately, if you've been on X, put it in the chat and we will talk about it. So, all right. So let's talk about Syria. I saw this, and this is a Kevin Briggin's approved article. He didn't like any of my other articles I tried to send him. But this one he thought was decent. It's on the stream. You can go to stream.org and it's called Syria. How did it come to this? And it's by a gentleman named Timothy Furnish. And it was published on December 12th. And in fact, why don't you give a little promo? You're going to have Mr. Furnish on your show soon.
Yeah. So I thought this article was really spot on historically and kind of accurately describing what's going on. So I reached out to him and he agreed to come on our Informed Takes podcast tomorrow night. So tomorrow night at 8 Eastern, he's going to be with us as we talk about this article and just kind of Syria as a whole in the Middle East and what's going on. He has a very, very unique background.
So tell us about Informed Takes at your little political podcast you've got going on there with your buddy.
Yeah, so me and my buddy Devin Smith, we decided to start a podcast where we discuss topics like this, geopolitical things. I love CFBU, but CFBU has a distinct purpose and mission, and so I kind of wanted to branch out and focus strictly on geopolitical things since my military career came to an end, and I can really talk about these things more openly now. And so, so we talk about all things geopolitical, foreign, domestic politics. And I'm really enjoying it. It's going really well.
Cool. Now, you're welcome. I'm also apparently producing your podcast now too, helping you with this.
Yes, you are. Thank you for sending me this article and helping me get Dr. Furnish on. Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. And it is a little confusing. I'm going to just put up this map really quick to help orient us because there's a lot happening here, and just having you kind of walk us through. Okay, we see Israel here is down in the tan, and then Syria is a neighbor of Israel, but it's quite a large country just south of Turkey and west of Iraq and north of Jordan. So there's a lot happening there. They've got a lot of interconnected neighbors, it seems.
Yes.
And so to walk us through what happened last week. All of a sudden I started seeing all these videos on Twitter where people were celebrating and dancing and in Syria, and I'm thinking I'm not super clear about what's happening.
Yeah. So one thing I will say, all of those countries on that map were created by the British and the French after World War I, right? So all of that used to belong to the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire fought with the Germans in World War I. They lost, and their empire got broken up. And the British and the French created those countries and those borders. So that's kind of the start of where we can say, okay, so people think Israel is the only country that was formed. All of those countries were formed. Jordan, they didn't exist the fall of the Ottoman Empire. So, talk about Syria. So Syria has been in a civil war since 2011. If you remember in 2011, there was this thing called the Arab Spring, where you had all of these. It started in Tunisia, where a man set himself on fire to protest the brutal treatment of the government. That started a wave of protest throughout the Middle East, throughout the Muslim world, I should say. And in these places like Libya, you saw Gaddafi get overthrown in Libya. You saw Mubarak get just these massive waves of protest of people calling for change. Well, those similar type of protests also popped up in Syria. And instead of Assad giving in and leaving office, he decided to fight back. And in fighting back, he basically turned his military against his own people. And they started mowing down people. And what happened with that is members of the military defected and began to fight on behalf of the people. And so you had this, what was called the Free Syrian Army, start to fight against the regular Syrian army. And that was just the start, because eventually you had jihadist groups come in. You had various other forces. You had the Kurds, you had Turkey. You have all these different forces in there trying to fight for control. The United States originally backed the Free Syrian Army. So we were arming them with weapons and things like that. Eventually, we realized that a lot of those weapons were just ending up in the hands of the jihadist groups. So we stopped funding it. We stopped supplying them because it got so muddy between who was who on the battlefield that there was no way to really tell. And so we stopped funding it because a lot of the stuff just ended up in the hands of groups like the one we're going to talk about today. That civil war went on, and it was brutal. Chemical weapons were used. It was indiscriminate bombing. That's why that's why I kind of roll my eyes at the claims against Israel and Gaza, because none of these people said anything about what was happening in Syria for all those years, and it was way worse. You had the Russians in there bombing indiscriminately. Nobody was talking about civilian deaths. Nobody was talking about the number of people being displaced. Nobody said anything. It was just, no one called the Russian Air Force to task for their bombing. And this, we're talking about numbers that just trump Gaza. The number of people who have died in Syria is just unreal. The number of refugees out of Syria is just unreal. But that civil war has been kind of at a ceasefire since, I believe, 2021. And it's been at a ceasefire, and it's kind of been at a holding where each group has just kind of held their own territory, and it's kind of operated as that. And so this group, HTS, they've been holding a portion of Syria for several years now. You have the Kurds have a section. You have Turkey and forces that Turkey supports holding a section. And then you had the regular Syrian government, which held Damascus and Aleppo, the major areas of the country, until December 8th, when all of that changed. And basically, go ahead.
Yeah. So tell us what happened, because my understanding is the Assad, I don't know what you call him, like
regime.
The regime. I don't know if he was technically the king or the president or the prime minister. I don't know what he was.
Yeah, he's listed as president, but there's no elections.
No elections. Okay. But he was a pretty brutal dictator. However,
yes.
Now we're finding out he was just really a Christian, and he's an ophthalmologist.
No, he was brutal.
Have you heard this?
No, I haven't.
You haven't heard this?
No, he's not a Christian. He's an Alawite, which is a form of Shia Islam. This man was
he's
brutal.
some like Christian adjacent traditional family. He looks like a Norman Rockwell painting, and he's fled to Russia now.
Yes,
and he's going back into his previous career as an ophthalmologist.
Now that I'm not surprised about. So his father is who took control of the country. There was a coup in 1971, and his father took control of the country. And he was kind of educated in the West. And when his father died, he got called back to take control in the year 2000. So he took over in the year 2000. And because he was Western educated and people were hoping that there would be kind of a change in Syria. Well, that was 2000. We know what happened in 2001 and the world changed. And he became less cooperative with the West because he feared that he was going to be part of the axis of evil because he was close allies with Iran, who was part of it, right? And so he dug his heels in and became more anti-West. And so he ruled like most countries that are ruled by a minority. The way you keep things under control is you rule very heavy-handedly. And so the group that ruled the country is only like 10% of the country. And so the way he ruled was very brutal. And so that's why you saw the people in the streets celebrating because that regime was one of the worst ones in the region. And so, but yeah, so I'm not surprised. Yeah, he did have a career. He was educated in the West. Yeah, I'm not surprised at him going back to doing what he was doing before they called him to rule again. But
well, let me show you his cute little family. This is the the other side of the conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're it looks like a little Norman Rockwell painting.
Yeah. What did it say about those who love their own? Like there's
He doesn't look like a vicious dictator.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't fit the mold, but he is.
Okay. He's just a lowly optometrist. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that when all the celebrating in the streets from your perspective is because he was quite oppressive to his own people.
Absolutely.
And what happened last week was there's some kind of a coalition that came together to overthrow him. So maybe get us caught up with the story.
So when this thing started, he reached out to Russia for help and support. And so Russia waged its first war away from home in decades, probably since Afghanistan in 79. And so Russia went to Syria, set up bases, and helped him stay in power. Well, Russia is preoccupied right now. Russia has their hands full with Ukraine. His other ally was Hezbollah, which is funded and set up by Iran. That was the largest fighting force on the ground. Well, what's happened since October 7th of last year? What has Israel done? On top of their war against Hamas, they started focusing on Hezbollah in the north. They took out their leadership. They took out, remember, the pagers. They took out all the middlemen. And then Israel started just bombing targets in Syria, southern Syria. And so Hezbollah has been decimated. And so he was really only left with his standard army, which isn't great. And many of those guys it's kind of like we saw in Iraq when ISIS took over. Once a force starts to move, the government or the regular army, if there's no motivation for them to fight, they're not going to fight. They don't want to die for that. And so he really had no support. And so that's why it happened so quickly, because his forces really didn't put up a fight. They pretty much laid down and said, here you go. They weren't going to die. And as the leader of the rebel group stated, he said, we're a country we're just tired. We're tired of war. And you saw that. And there was really no opposition to them moving in and taking over. And that's why Assad had to flee. He had no more support.
It all happened so fast.
It
was like a day or two. I mean, it was like,
it was
Damascus fell and what is it?
Aleppo. Yep.
Yeah. And so it just seemed like, I guess when you say that the army just didn't put up a fight, that makes sense to me then why it fell so quickly.
Yeah.
So who's the money behind these rebel the rebel alliance that's coming together to overtake the Assad regime?
Yeah. So you remember the Assad regime is a minority group of the country. They're only like 10%, and they're Shias. So we're going back to this whole Shia Sunni divide. That's why he's so heavily supported by Iran and Hezbollah, because they're Shia. Well, Turkey is the one who is funding the rebel group HTS, because Turkey is Sunni, and HTS and these rebel groups, these jihadist groups, are Sunnis. And so Turkey is the one who's been the primary backer and supporter of these groups. And so, and it's all about the Sunni Shia divide. Um, and so, yeah, that's really just what it boils down to. Turkey is the main funder right now.
So are the Sunnis? All right, so this is showing my age a little bit. When I
Okay.
was a kid, the Shiites were the ones that were the like kind of the more violent Muslims that we would always hear about on the news every night. You never heard about the Shias, bombing buses and stuff. But are they where is that now? Are they both kind of the same? I know it's kind of two different streams of Islam.
Yeah. They're the same but different. The Shias are smarter than the Sunnis to a degree in terms of how they wage their terrorism. Like
Yeah.
Hezbollah is a terrorist group, but you know what else Hezbollah is? A political group. They have parliamentary seats in Lebanon and Syria, in Iraq. Like they're part of the government. They have this legitimate part of themselves, and they have this militia fighting force. The Sunnis never did that. The Sunnis never got there. The Sunnis were just all about. So when you hear about these jihadist groups, these are all Sunnis. Al Qaeda, ISIS. What
They're
are the ones?
Sunnis. The
Sunnis.
ISIS is Sunnis. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I assume they were Shia. Okay.
No. So Iran is Shia. Pretty
Okay.
much all the other countries. So Iraq is 65% Shia. And each country has a Shia minority in it, but most of those Muslim countries are Sunnis. Sunnis are the vast majority of Muslims in the world. Yeah, and so you probably heard that when you were a kid about the Shias because of the Iranian Revolution in '79.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was at that time like the big enemy because of what they did in Iran. But in terms of when we talk about terrorist attacks against the U.S., they've all been pretty much Sunnis. Whether it was the bombing in Saudi Arabia, the bombing in Lebanon, the bombing in the USS Cole, the ship that got hit, our embassies in Africa and in Tunisia, in Tanzania.
Those are all Sunnis.
That was all Al Qaeda Sunni elements. Yes.
Okay. So then that makes me wonder if Sunnis are a big part of this rebel alliance in Syria. So because one of the things I understand from the Assad regime is that there was relative stability, although, he was a dictator.
Yeah.
But their religious minorities who lived in Syria had relative peace.
Yes.
The Druze, the Druze, which is an offshoot of Islam, but it's kind of its own thing.
Yeah.
The Christians and there was a few
then the
other
Sunnis and Shias. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was relative stability. Is this bad news for Christians? Do you think they're going to migrate into Sharia law? How do you see this kind of playing out?
Yeah, it could be bad news. Right now, they're saying the right things. They're saying that, Syria is for all people. They're saying minority rights will be protected. Women can go to school. And I will say in the areas in which they were governing the last few years, they did not invoke Sharia law. Girls were allowed to go to school. And so the fears that people are worried about so far, this group hasn't done it, even though it's in their ideology too. I mean, they're no different. Well, I put it like this. Their origins are no different than Al Qaeda and ISIS. They come from the same theological thread. The question is, how have they transformed, which they claim they have. Yeah, and so it's just really, they're saying the right things, and so far they're doing the right things. It's a matter of how long will that hold up.
So this guy that's the head of the kind of the rebel group though, isn't he from ISIS? Like kind of the
Yes.
narrative that I'm seeing on Twitter is this is all US created. The CIA is behind this. And this is just another example of the CIA toppling a third world government. And the guy that they're putting in place is also funded by the CIA. In fact, he comes out of ISIS, which was also created by the CIA. So, see, Americans are really the bad guys again. Like
No, and
this is a real narrative that
yeah,
I'm seeing on Twitter.
I know,
Okay.
and ISIS was not created by the CIA.
You're skeptical of that theory.
Yeah, absolutely. People are
Okay.
all anytime something happens, people always assume the United States and the CIA was behind it. Eh, we're all powerful, we're omnipotent, we're omnipresent, right? We control all things, and that's just not how the world works. We have our influences, we have our preferences, but a lot of times we're reacting to things that are going on. You can't control people. You can't control countries, nations, events. And so this guy, yes, he was part of I mean, he's been fighting us since 2003, since we went into Iraq.
Okay.
He was in his early 20s. He was a young man. He decided to fight. So he's a hardened fighter. He's been fighting for 20 some years. Um, he was part of Al Qaeda at first, and then kind of part of ISIS as these alliances and then he fought a war against ISIS in Syria. So there was this internal sectarian jihadist fight for control in Syria, um, because he did not want to fall under this new caliphate called ISIS that he was his own thing. And so they went to war, and he lost that war. ISIS won. But so this guy he's seen it all. He's fought, and that's why people think because he's been fighting so long, because he's seen it all, he's gotten smarter, and he's
Okay.
realized. Well, number one, he denounced international terrorism. He said he has no goals for this any kind of caliphate or anything like that. He became focused on Syria. He said years ago he's a Syrian. He cares about what happens to Syria, and so that's why his focus was in Syria. Um, and so that's been his thing ever since, and that's what he cares about. And he mentioned that because they talked about, hey, will minorities be protected? And he was like, look, we've all existed as Syrians for thousands of years. Like he's a you can tell he's intelligent and you can tell he understands. He's like, look, we've been Syrians forever. Like the Christians have been here forever, Muslims have been there forever, Druze. It's all been this hodgepodge forever. According to him, he is not trying to make some type of hardcore Islamic only type of place where only Muslims can live.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
now, I will say this, in Islamic law, is always been a caveat for groups to live in Muslim lands. They just pay a tax.
yeah.
They kind of get treated as second class citizens, but they're not persecuted. They're not murdered and killed, and they can practice their religions, in certain. But so I'm not saying that situation won't pop up. They follow the Islamic law in that regard. But in terms of what we would think worst case scenario, I don't think the worst case scenario is I don't think you're gonna see Christians being gathered up and beheaded and things like that.
Or the Christian women
Yeah.
being recruited into slavery. You don't think
Yeah, I don't
it's
think
gonna go that far?
no, I don't think it'll go there.
I hope you're right, Kevin. I hope I'm wrong. I
He's gonna lose power. He's he he's gonna lose power. ISIS tried that. And he understands that if he wants to make it in Syria as the ruler and leader of this country, he's going to have to play with Western nations.
Do you think this will make the Middle East more stable or less stable?
I think the Middle East is going to become more stable, and I'll say this, and this is why.
You're a
You're,
minority voice.
I know, but this is why I'm hopeful that it's going to become more stable.
Okay.
The biggest disruptor in the Middle East is the Sunni Shia divide. That is the biggest disruptor. Right now, Iran has been weakened tremendously. I mean, Hamas is gone,
Well, that's
Hezbollah
not what
is
I'm
gone.
hearing in the news. I'm hearing that Iran is running drones like 3 miles off our coast. We'll get to that. But this is the Iran is running the world. You must not be on X.
I,
This is what I'm seeing.
I am, but I stay out of the For You section and I just stay in the following section. So I try not to
I
see
do be
that.
clicking on that For You.
That's where you get all the crazy.
Yeah.
But as the Shia threat becomes less and less, as that thing becomes, Hezbollah is gone. So like think about Israel. Like I said, the biggest
Oh,
divide
I
is
got questions about Israel.
yeah,
I'm
but I
just
said the
waiting.
biggest divide is Sunni Shia. Most people say the biggest divide in the Middle East is Israel. It's like no,
Right.
the
Yeah.
Sunni nations all were at peace with Israel. Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the Abraham Accords of the Gulf Arab states. They were all at peace with Israel. It was the Shias who were the last holdouts for peace with Israel. It was Iran and Hezbollah, and of course they funded Hamas. And so that's what the fighting was with Israel. The more Sunni you become around there, I think you're going to have less conflict.
Okay.
And so that's my hope. Now, people are saying that Syria itself could be a fight for power and control within Syria. And I'm not going to rule it off the table. But so far we're not seeing that.
Okay.
Um
All right. Well, you did predict that way back, like 14, 15 months ago when the war in Israel started, you did predict that things would get better.
yeah, if you let them finish, if you let them finish the job, things will get better.
All right. Okay, but all right, now I got more questions because what we've seen since the collapse in Syria is now things like this map where Israel is bombing Syria.
Absolutely.
And multiple sites. And then also, this is a similar image than the one that I had sent you the other day of like there were rumors all over X that there was a nuclear bomb.
Nuking Syria.
It was the end of the world. And you're like, get off X.
I did.
Stop
I told you to get off X.
I was like, bye. So why is this happening? Why is Israel bombing Syria?
One thing you do in the military when you have an adversary like Syria and Israel have been adversaries, Israel has every military target in Syria mapped out. And so when the Syrian regime fell, what Israel decided to do was go in and bomb all of the military targets to stop the new group from gaining control of it. And so where there's air defense, whether it's so with that big explosion, that was because they hit a munition stockpile. So you hit a warehouse full of weapons, you're gonna get a pretty big boom out of it. And so that's what they did. And so yeah, they're destroying all of the Syrian military infrastructure so that the new group can't be a threat and take it over because they've got the same concerns too. This is in their minds a jihadist group taking over Syria, going to be a neighbor to them. They're like, no, we're not letting this stuff stick around. So they're destroying everything they can. So that's what it is. Yeah. They're not killing any people. They're just bombing military targets that are pretty much deserted
or
now.
they're trying to cripple them. But wouldn't this new alliance not really appreciate being bombed? I just, at what point does that not help? Does it destabilize the relationship between Israel and this new emerging rebel alliance in Syria?
Yeah, I mean, I would say as long as Israel isn't bombing their people or bombing like the rebel group fighters, I mean, they're just bombing, Syrian government military targets that are probably abandoned at this point. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure they don't like bombs falling, but they understand they know what's going on.
Okay. Well, speaking of what's going on and people knowing things, let's talk about the drones because this is crazy. So I hadn't even heard about this. This was going on for several days. And then my mother says, "What is your opinion on the drones?" I'm like, "I don't even know what we're talking about." And so off the East Coast, in New Jersey, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, civilians start noticing these drones. I'm texting you. What's your theory about this? Now, you don't have any insider information. You're in the Air Force. I'm pretty sure you don't work for the CIA, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm still kind of watching you, but you're pretty sure that you don't have any insider information. But what is your
No.
theory about what's happening with these drones?
So I had a few theories. At first, I thought, okay, this is military or homeland defense type stuff because this is the thing. This was the telling thing to me. The government said, um, they said two things. Number one, we don't know what they are, but then they also said there's no threat to the civilian population. Well, if you don't know what they are, how can you make that second statement unless you know what they are? And so I'm pretty sure the government knows what these
I
things
had the same question. You know it's not nefarious, but you don't know what it is.
Exactly. Those two
I'm
things don't
pretty
go
sure
together.
you're the US government. You know exactly what this is.
Yes, they
Okay.
know, they're just not saying. And
Okay.
so at first I thought it might have been some type of, military experiments or test because you can test certain things in the desert, but sometimes you might need to test something around the civilian urban population because you're trying to test some type of capability. But I changed my mind on that when someone started talking about the lights on them. So the way they have the lights on them with the red and the green on the specific wing of the aircraft, they said that is FAA regulations. So someone has gone. The military, we don't apply by FAA regulations. So that's like, okay, it's not military. It's got to be civilian commercial because someone went through the trouble to make these things FAA regulation. Um,
Okay, hold on, hold on. So you're telling me your theory now is that this actually isn't the military.
I don't
Is
think it's
that
the military because we wouldn't put those lights on there that way. We don't care about FAA regulations. We're not, and when we use a drone in some country, we're not putting lights on it so they can see us.
Hmm. Okay,
Yeah,
so then this is the headline today and the New York Post. um whole story here. FAA bans drones. The, the post is just the worst. It has a lot of ads. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
it
people.
does.
FAA bans drones over parts of New Jersey, threatens deadly force for imminent security threat. And so now they're saying, we're going to shoot you down if you have a drone and you're a civilian. I mean, it said in this article, expect the government to be at your door.
Yeah.
Now, does
I,
that support your theory that it's not the military, that
no,
there's
I mean, yeah, because the FAA wouldn't be saying that if it was military.
yeah.
So it is commercial, it is civilian. The question is who's doing it and why. Um, and the other theory that I've heard is that this is being done because the government is trying to push Congress to push certain anti-drone legislation. And so you create a problem and you say, hey, this is happening because we don't have proper drone protections. You need to pass the Drone Act, right? And they start pressuring Congress to pass this act because people are worried and afraid about these drones. We need to do something. And so I think that is the most likely case is that these things are intentionally being this is intentionally being made a news story to promote certain type of legislation. That even the Department of Homeland Security chief has said we need to pass this legislation. And it was like, yeah, you're creating a crisis so you can push something. I don't think there's any real threat because if there was a real threat, because I worked for what was called NORAD, Northern Air Defense, or Northcom, Northern
I
Command.
heard that they're in charge. They're actually
Yeah.
running the military now.
Who? Tomorrow.
NORAD.
Well, NORAD is part of the military. That's what I'm saying. Like when I was in the Air Force, our job was Homeland Defense, air defense. And if something like this was flying, we It wouldn't just be let go. We're gonna scramble jets on it. We're gonna figure out who's flying these things. Like they know who's flying these things. There's no way this is going completely oblivious and then, oh, we don't know who's doing this or where this is coming from. I don't buy that for 1 second. We would have known by now.
Okay, so theories on X, and again, I'm pretty sure Kevin doesn't work for the CIA, so I'm pretty sure he's going to tell us the truth here. That one theory is that they're sniffing for radiation because there's a missing nuclear bomb from Iran that came into the country. This is a real theory. And there's radiation that's leaking in New Jersey and New York, and the drones are sniffing. So they're looking for this missing bomb. Thoughts on that theory?
I would say that this is the thing. If it was the CIA, if it was something like that, we know how to not be seen. These drones are clearly trying to be seen, right? You don't fly with all your lights on and throw up 7 or 8 of these things at one time if you're not trying to be seen. Someone wants you to know these things are there. If this was some type of covert thing, it wouldn't be this obvious, you know. That's why I'm not buying to a lot of conspiracy theories like it's some kind of covert thing, because, and that's why I lean more towards the trying to create a story, because someone clearly wants you to know they're there. Someone clearly wants you to see them. And so, yeah, I don't, and this is the thing. Iran, bless their hearts, they hate us, but there's nothing they can do about us. Like not Israel, Iran doesn't want a war with the United States.
Oh, they're a few miles off our coast, Kevin.
They look, it's like you got to remember that part of the world.
Okay.
Macho-ness and toughness and pride matters heavily. So they will give a lot of rhetoric, death to America, and then launch some rockets and do this type of stuff. It's all for show. They don't want a war. They know they would be no different than Iraq. It'll take us a couple of weeks and we'll take them out. That's not what they want.
So you're not buying they're searching for a nuclear warhead theory.
No.
Okay, because
that's creative though. I give them credit for that.
Well, if you go on the Daily Mail or the Mirror, these are highly reputable UK news sources. I mean, the headlines on the Daily Mail, which, you know, people can vet that out.
Mm-hmm.
Radiation levels in New York spike as mysterious drones terrorize. The ads. The ads are so much. Terrorize the Northeast. Okay. So maybe there's something to that.
Sure.
You're a skeptic. Okay.
So I mean, if the New York Post knows radiation levels have risen, then go find where the radiation is coming from.
Oh, there's maps. Yeah.
So nobody's looking for a nuclear weapon because we could have found it, because where the big radiation thing is where the bomb is.
That's where the drones are doing. They're sniffing. They're looking for the radiation.
I think they would have found it by now.
Okay. Okay. So theory number 2 is, and this I watched I think it was on Alex Jones' live stream the other day. Theory number 2 is that this is a plan to stop the inauguration, to create a national emergency so that it can result in the military taking over the government and martial law and canceling the Constitution. What do you think about that theory?
Well, first of all, you start out with Alex Jones. So
now wait a minute. Mr. Jones has broken some big stories. He's been right about some things.
Bless his heart. But no.
No.
If you were going to try to create a situation where you would say we can't do the transfer of power, it would need to be a major major incident. You're talking about 9/11 style type of thing to where the country's on lockdown, everything like, and you probably need a 9/11 on like each coast. Like we are under attack. Like it would
See,
have to be.
this is the thing that makes me wonder if you're in the CIA, because we all know the CIA was behind 9/11 too.
Have you been watching Candace Owens?
It's my duty.
No.
Oh, okay.
There was a whole book wrote on the 9/11 failures of the intelligence community. We can't get blamed for the failures and for doing it. Like, no, we failed on that day.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But no, like I say, it would take something very major for you to try to say we can't do the transfer of power, like in Ukraine, right? Ukraine is saying there's no way we can have elections. There's no way we're at war, right? And people are saying, oh, Zelensky just wants to hold on to power. It's like, I don't know how you want this man to hold elections in a country that's being bombed and under war. Like, I don't know. So I'm not a Zelensky fan or anything, but I'm like, I can kind of see why they haven't had elections since they got invaded. You know?
So the drones, you think is some, I don't know, some kind of commercial entity
Absolutely.
that's trying to kind of create could we say, like, it's like a massive publicity stunt?
Yeah, it's definitely commercial because, like I said, the FAA regulation lights and stuff. It's not military. The question is, why are they doing it and what are they doing? That's still I don't. That's why the theory about collusion and trying to force a news story to force legislation makes the most sense to me. Otherwise, I can't imagine what it is they're doing. And why no company has put out a release and said, hey guys, it's us. Sorry, we're just, testing our new drone fleet. Like,
but you think the feds know exactly who this is?
Absolutely, they know what it is. There's no way we're going to let something happen in our airspace and we don't know what it is. And it's all over the news and like they know what it is. That's why and they could come out and say what it is if they wanted to and put all these fears and theories to bed, but they're not. They're letting it go on. So the question is why?
People are panicked, Kevin. And I know I'm kind of trying to take it in a lighthearted direction here, but people are panicked and I appreciate the conversation. Maybe we can end on a note of, from a biblical perspective. As Christians, we want to look into things. We want to look into evidence. We don't want to let our emotions and our imaginations get away from us. And yet we're also living in an age when a lack of transparency does make us suspicious because of things that we experienced 3 and 4 years ago when we felt like the government lied to us actively about things, and things that were called conspiracies 3 and 4 years ago now turn out to be, well, there was actually something to that. And so I get it why people get radicalized into these sort of speculative ideas, and why people have become more sympathetic to more and more extreme ideas. It makes sense to me because there's a group of us that have been kind of radicalized in a way because of feeling duped. Feeling like,
and it's completely justifiable. This is what I will say, because a lot of people have operating from the standpoint of, well, we can't trust anything we know, and so anything that pops up is always some type of insidious thing behind it that they're not telling us. I will just say this: there's always one thing I've noticed, especially on X, and when these things start happening, whether it's drones, Ukraine, Syria, the immediate aftermath, there's already people trying to shape the narrative, right? They don't have information. They're just trying to shape the narrative in a particular direction. And that's what people get caught up in. And you just have to realize that person with a Twitter account doesn't know anything. right? They are just speculating. They're just throwing things out. They're just, feeding the beast. They're getting traffic. They're doing all these things, but they don't really know anything. So until something legitimate comes out, and you can listen to different theories, say, okay, this might be true, this may not be true, but I would not let someone with a Twitter account get me worked up when they're just sitting behind a computer. Like, what sources do they have? Like, what do they know? They don't typically don't know any more than you know. They're just
Yeah.
out there being vocal about it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for helping us talk through some of these things. And it does concern me when I see videos on X of women already being kidnapped and conscripted into sex slavery, or Christians being gathered up. But you taught me to ask a really good question, which is, what's the source for this?
Yeah.
And to look into that. And because there are a lot of like really sad and scary videos right now on X,
Yes.
allegedly coming out of Syria. But then when I try to track down, well, what's the source of this? It's
Sometimes
unnamed.
those videos are old. They're not even from the
Yeah.
place that they're saying they're from.
Yeah.
And I know some of the stuff you were sending me, I was reading like the dialogue with the video that they had posted, and I was like, this sounds like propaganda to me. It reads like propaganda. Like the rhetoric with they're already trying to galvanize people behind a cause, right? This isn't just reporting the news or, hey, no, they're trying to galvanize people and playing on people's emotions. And it's like that video could be 10 years old. It could be from Iraq. It could be, from anywhere. But they're like, no, this just happened in Syria. And if ever something initially happens and you already got videos, I question that. I know we live in the cell phone world, but sometimes I question this. All this stuff is immediately flowing out. All this information. It's like, let's hold off a minute and see what's real. And so everything I've heard from this group is that I laugh because they even said diversity is our strength.
Yeah.
I couldn't help. I was like, they've been reading all of the Western propaganda.
Yeah, exactly.
They're saying the right things. They know what we want to hear.
Yeah.
But so they're a country under sanctions. He wants the sanctions gone. They have to rebuild the country. It's completely destroyed. I think he's just been a politician, and right now that's a good thing, because to be a politician means he's going to cater to what the power nations around him want, because he wants aid, he wants help, he wants, so.
Well, and Israel would rather have a stable neighbor, I think.
Yes.
Than a crazy dictator. But
Yes.
I am hopeful that I'm watching.
Yeah. I would say this:
the minority,
crazy dictator and stable nation are not at odds with one another. Sometimes they go hand in hand.
Yeah. And it seems like under the Assad regime, to some degree, that was true, although he did seem also very brutal. But I would love to see a stable nation that has a place for religious minorities, because Syria is a very ancient Christian
it is
land, and there are a lot of ancient Christian churches and brothers and sisters in the Lord, and they've had it very hard for a long time.
Yeah.
So.
And like I said, they've lived there. I mean, it's been under Muslim rule since the 7th century.
Yeah.
And Christians have been there the entire time. And so this isn't anything new for them.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. It's a great conversation. Thanks for doing this. And we want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And if people want to know more information about Kevin's new podcast, Informed Takes, where do they find out about that? How do they follow your work on that?
Yeah. So Informed Takes, we have a Facebook page. We have, of course, YouTube channel. Just if you just type in Informed Takes, it'll come up. And also a Substack where I do writing and stuff. So
awesome. And how many more days till you get out of the military?
January 1st is my official retirement date, but I'm finished with any type of military service. So you will never see the shaved Kevin ever again.
Because when can we start talking about certain topics?
Yes, yes, after
Is
the new
that
year,
after the new year?
2025.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me
Okay.
too.
All right. We'll see you, Kevin.
All right, have a good
All
one.
right. Bye. Bye. All right, friends. Thanks for watching. And I just want to say, send us your feedback, what you thought of this conversation. I know it's a little bit off brand, but I know that a lot of you have been wondering, you've been writing to us, like, are you going to talk about the Middle East? Are you going to talk about Syria? What's happening? So, wanted to get that in before the end of the year. And also, before the end of the year, I want to just let you know that we are so grateful for your partnership and friendship. Those of you who donate to the ministry, you are what make us being able to do these podcasts possible. And for me to be able to do research, cutting edge research, like watching Alex Jones streams. That is what I do because of your support. Thank you very much. No, with all seriousness, we are so grateful for you and just want to say thank you for those of you who have come on to join us as new monthly partners. We've been trying to look for and pray for 30 new monthly partners going into the new year. We're halfway to that goal as of today. We have 15 new monthly partners. Thank you to each and every one of you who has stepped up to do that. And we are grateful for your partnership and all of you who gave in our Giving Tuesday campaign, all of that. Just so grateful. We're dropping videos all month of the impact that CFBU has uh, in people's lives. Because if there was no way for us to be here on a full-time basis, we wouldn't be here to answer emails and have calls and do all of the things that we do day in and day out to help bring hope to people when they call us, when they've been canceled by their kids or their church, or they're confused about their kids' school and they need resourcing, they need help, they need prayer, they need encouragement. Because of support of people like you, Monique and I are able to do that. And so we're grateful and we want to say thank you. And if the Lord leads you and if you have the means, we ask that you would partner with us financially as we close out this year to maybe remember us in your year-end giving. Thank you so much. You can go to centerforbiblicalunity.com/year-end and find out more about what we're doing and how to partner with us. Thanks so much, everyone. Good night. God bless you and have